Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch,
And I'm all.
and this is our conference championship game breakdown. We'll break down both the Ravens and the Chiefs and the Lions and the 49ers. We'll talk about how the Lions look like the Atlanta Falcons there for a minute, and Lamar looked like Standard Lamar in the playoffs. We won't get into the Super Bowl this episode, but we'll do a Super Bowl episode preview next week. We'll break down the whole game and give thoughts. Not that we've done well picking the playoffs so far, but we can always try. So with that, past and present, Maul's bringing it to us hot this week.
50-50 is not bad. I mean, it's just, but yeah, we've been pretty bad so far. Which, name one guy who's done well, because most of these games have not gone as expected. I'll just say that.
I mean, if you're a Chiefs fan, you're like, this is exactly what we said was going to happen.
I'll say most of the nation, but
Yeah.
all right. So I'm giving clues. You want past or present first?
Let's go past.
Past. Okay. All right. So this player went to Ole Miss and then played for the Saints.
Oh, is this Deuce McAllister?
It is Deuce McAllister. I was going to say, a couple clues. I was going to say, one, if you'd have given this to me, I probably wouldn't have gotten it, just because that's just such a small base there. That's hard to find. Two, I was very surprised when you go back and look at his stats. He played first. He was a first round pick, which that makes sense. But he played from 01 to 09. And if you look at his career rushing yards, it's only like 6,000 or something like that. He had 49 touchdowns, which to me, I mean, Deuce was like a household name. His stats, I feel like, and his awards, because again, he was a 2-time Pro Bowl. That's it. And obviously a Super Bowl champ. But outside of that, if you would have, in the future, and you ask me, or when we talk about hey, somebody who was a good running back, Deuce McAllister is one of the names you bring up. You know what I mean? And if you look at his stats, people are going to be like, why was this guy a household name? But he was. I mean, anybody who watched him play knows the dude was it.
Yeah, I mean, I sit back and I think about, I'm trying to think of when Sean Payton got there, because that to me was sort of I forget what that coach's name that was there post Katrina. He had blonde hair. It was sort of spiked.
I know who you're talking about.
They struggled.
Yeah.
It was such a, I mean, they were, for the longest time, they were the Aints.
Yeah.
Aints. It wasn't until Breeze and they get Peyton and they really started building that offense. And that offense was really, I mean, it was sort of nuts, because they go from Deuce to Mark Ingram and a mix of, before Ingram, it was Reggie. And Reggie was supposed to be that guy that was just he was one of those huge college names that I don't feel like it was injury with Reggie. I still can't figure out why Reggie didn't make it.
I don't know. I don't know either, because it's not like he was bad, a bust. I think it was just one of those his expectations going in were just so high, and maybe it just wasn't the right offense, because that plays a large role into the way people perform in the NFL. I mean, DeMarco Murray's a perfect example of in a good in the right offense. I won't say good offense, but the right offense, you can be amazing and be the same player just in the wrong offense and be a foregone conclusion. I don't know if it was a little bit of that. He didn't live up to expectations, I'll tell you that, which is sad. But
I know this may be just this is when I'm sitting back thinking why, this is just the immediate hot take that comes to mind. I feel like he entered the league 15 years too early. They now want the back that can they build an offense sort of like the Chiefs, where it's yeah, we need you to run, but what we really need you is out of the backfield and go into the slot and be this sort of dynamic guy. And when he entered the league, it was still Adrian Peterson, Priest Holmes. Like it was this, I need you to carry the rock like 30 times. Not saying that Reggie couldn't do it, but like what made Reggie so difficult was the fact that it's like if you put him on a slot, it was like, dude, I don't know who we're gonna guard this dude with.
You
Like
weren't going to. Especially, yeah, coming out of the backfield, you try to put a linebacker on him, like, not happening.
especially linebackers of like oh five. I think people forget that. Like you look, it's funny because me, you, and Pops were talking text this morning about these games, and I was sitting there complaining about how much tougher old defenses were. Which some of those linebackers, like you look back on it, and you're like, dude, these dudes weighed like close to
Yeah,
three
they're
hundred
running like a
pounds.
5'2".
Yeah, but they hit like
Yeah,
all get out. Like
yeah,
they were just, I mean, a stone wall, but they could not run to save their life.
yeah.
So yeah, I know it's a lot for getting on Deuce McAllister, but it's funny. The only reason I know that is because when we were at the Hall of Fame and we were looking at helmets,
Mhm.
you were like, "Where'd Deuce go?" And I had no idea. And it wasn't until you said Ole Miss that I was like, I am never gonna forget that because
Hmm.
he's a popular name. So
Yeah, huge popular name. I was surprised when I looked at his stats. All right, we'll go present, and I don't know if you've done this one on the Instagram or the TikTok or not yet, but a pretty big household name right now is Max Crosby.
oh, that's hold on. I believe Eastern Michigan.
Eastern Michigan, that's it. And
But
again, I didn't know that one. I had to look that one up for such a popular player and such a good player. Yeah, Eastern Michigan.
oh, well, I was talking about what pops on this episode last that we haven't aired it yet because it's the off season stuff that we're getting into, but it sort of makes me like you sit down and you think of it from like an NFL scout perspective. Like I think every year, like Bama, USC, Georgia, all these big name schools, they're sending like 14 guys to the combine, and
Yeah.
you're just like, oh, these are going to be the next generation. And then one of the best guys in the league is this dude out of Eastern Michigan. You're like, one, how did all the colleges miss out on this dude? And
Well,
then
I
like,
I wanna see some game film on him in Eastern Michigan. Like, I know for a fact I'd never even heard of his name until, a few years ago when he started wreaking havoc with the Raiders. So, like, I wanna know if it's like a product of, like, you see this dude just wreaking havoc in a place like Eastern Michigan in the MAC, and maybe some scouts are just kind of like, yeah, he's good, but he's playing Eastern Michigan because that happens all the time where they're just like, oh, you see it all the time, like, oh, if he played real competition, he wouldn't be doing this. I mean, they still do that nowadays. So maybe that was a little bit of it, but usually a guy who has a skill set like Max Crosby, like, I mean, the dude should have just been dominating up there, and that should have at least drawn some attention where he was getting some looks early on. But I don't know.
I mean, this makes it to a perfect segue. I know that they won, but then you get the opposite end of this where it's like Chase Young goes up and dominates at Ohio State. Everyone's like, dude, this dude's amazing. He's going to be this, you know, Hall of Fame level defensive end. He's going to be Pro Bowls, goes number 2 overall in the draft. And I will give him his rookie year with Washington look good. Dude, that dude gave minimum effort yesterday. That Jameer Gibbs touchdown run, like he's just like walking. Like and they ran at him every play.
I said it in the text. I mean, he won Rookie of the Year and then pulled a Vince Young. Like, I don't know if it's because he got paid or like he just had one good year, but like I don't know where these guys just disappear to. It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, and I was watching him specifically. I mean, it's funny because you said that, and then a wide receiver checked him, like, and not just checked
Yeah,
him, but like blocked.
rerouted him. Yeah,
Yes, complete. His leverage is some of the worst that I've seen. Like,
yeah,
this dude stands straight up, and offensive linemen are just like, "Well, thanks for making my job easy." It it was shocking to see for as highly touted as he's been, someone that really doesn't make an impact at all,
yeah.
which I think is why Washington was happy to get rid of him. And, it makes more sense now why Montez Sweat drew a higher price than Chase Young
Oh yeah.
because Sweat's playing really well and Young still, yes, he's going to the Super Bowl, but I think the Chiefs are gonna take advantage of what the Lions showed, you know, for the first half of the game anyhow. The second half, they just rewatch any Atlanta Falcons game, and that's exactly what we saw. Um, I guess we can go right into the Lions 49ers game. I think the best way to probably start this out, since it's the topic on everybody's mind, is what do you feel about, the fourth down calls?
Look, I mean, personally, I didn't like them in the situation they were in. The first one, the first one I didn't hate. I get it. Like they were still winning at the time. Like it wasn't this. Anybody who's played can tell you the momentum shifts in games are real and you can feel it, right? And like at the time, I I don't think it had quite shifted yet. So I don't hate it. In that situation, sure, I think you should still kick the points. Um, the last one though, that's to me that's where Dan Campbell just needs to mature as a head coach. And don't get me wrong, I love the way he plays and I love his aggressiveness. However, there's got to be some maturing as a head coach that like you can't just go out there and riverboat Ron it all the time. You know what I mean? Like again, like players like that, and like in some situations that works. And if you have the momentum and the feel behind it, yeah, sure. But like, man, 3 minutes left in the game, and San Fran is just running the clock, dude, you gotta just tie the game, right? Like you gotta give your team that shot, right? And like that's the one that I hated, because this is the biggest factor because it didn't matter whether you scored a touchdown on that drive or not. It was still a two-score game, right? So like you just put the points on the board, get down by that touchdown. I take it back. I'm talking about the third down run. But I don't like it. Like he could have tied the game, and it did become a bigger like an outcome in the game where he should have just taken the points. Now he's gonna make the argument. I didn't watch any of the post game stuff, which he probably already did, of just like playing like that is what got them there, and I get it, right? Like it's hard to fault that logic, but at the same time, like if you're telling me that you're playing the Super Bowl the exact same way that you're playing week 2 or 3, you're a fool and probably a bad coach, right? So like I don't think Dan Campbell is a bad coach. I think they have a great future, and like I'm excited to see them continue to, be in the NFC North, but I think he is going to have to adjust a little bit of the meter of like full blown Dan Campbell to a little bit of like there's got to be some strategy, right? Like this isn't Madden where you just never punt and go for it on every single fourth down. Like there's got to be some actual game script consideration going on there in order to like keep your team in these games, because 2 field goals is 6 points and they lost by 3, right? So obviously the 49ers probably would have played it different, but like you just in certain situations, dude, you just got to take the points. You just got to accept it.
And I understand that. I think the only thing that I will sit back and look to this offseason to say, "Oh, there's a difference," and now I understand it more, is if they change kickers. Like, if you're worried about a dude making a 48-yard field goal and you don't have confidence in him, then I understand that, but then you gotta go get a different kicker this offseason, because I guarantee you if the Ravens were in the same position, the Ravens are putting Tucker out there and saying, "Tie us up." It's
Sure.
like
Yeah,
it
100%.
and the other thing, I didn't mind the first. I'm sort of in the same boat as you. Well, I'm not sort of, I am in the same boat. The first going for it, it was like, "Hey, all we're doing is we're still making it a two-score game. Yes, we could give them a little momentum. We held them to a field goal, you know, we could go make it a two-score game, or I can really start leaning on San Francisco and saying, we're not going away." And now Reynolds, he didn't know it at the time. Reynolds played awful in the second half. He had that crucial drop, which I know it's a little outside, but I hate it. Like Romo will always do that. Let's talk about we'll get into the commentators here in a second, because both commentators drove me crazy. you sit back and it's like he made that throw and they're like, "Oh, it wasn't a great throw." And I'm like, "Well, he's getting paid like over $3 million this year to catch that."
Yeah,
Like,
it was good enough he should have caught it.
yeah, like I get it if the dude's like having to go up and like he's barely getting 3 Odell Beckham fingers on it, then you know what? Hey, tremendous catch. But in that situation, and then the following, I think it was 2 drives later, 3rd and 13 or something, Goff hits him right in the stomach.
Right in
Like
the belly. Yeah, like he couldn't have put it in between the numbers any better.
and flat out drop. And you like look at those 2 plays and you're like, yo, Reynolds like costs them huge, like with time and momentum, all these different things. Like the Lions were consistently driving on the Niners for most of the game. They, I found that the Lions' first down plays, they'd sort of get themselves behind the stick. But going back to the fourth down, like I didn't have a problem with the first one. The second one, though, I was just like, man, it would you could tell they didn't have like a play. Like
Yeah,
it was just like we're just gonna run something and hope this works out. And it was clear like they didn't have this like
I
this
mean,
is our this is
all
our
the
thing.
all the momentum was gone, right? Like they were already losing. It was already this like deflating, like, oh my God, we let them come back. Like now we're losing. Like, if anything, that's the one time to like, dude, just get points on the board, tie the game. And like that's one of those where everybody's like, whew, we played terrible in the second half, but like, hey, we're still in this. Like we are tied. We're not even losing, right? But when you go for it, I mean, talk about taking all the air out of your sails, right? Like and I get it, right? Like if he makes it and that they get the fourth down or whatever, and that ends up where they can score a touchdown, and people are like, oh, what a ballsy move, and it was brilliant and all that. But I don't know, it's just a risk reward thing for me. Which, like I said, the first one I don't hate. I probably would have just taken the points, but the second one I hated.
Yeah. And then go back to the commentators. My dad call I call my dad after the game, the second one, and he's like, "Did you hear Greg Olson saying that dumb thing about the 3 timeouts?" I was like, "Yes." Greg was like, "Well, using that timeout, now they're forced to kick an onside kick." And I'm like, "There was 40 seconds to go in the game. You're kicking the onside regardless." Like, if they didn't have a third timeout, you really think they're just going to kick that out of the back of the end zone? And like, I just find that with the way San Francisco's offense had moved it, like I'm going to take the you couldn't stop him the whole second half. I think that's why he went forward on that fourth down. It was like my defense ain't stopping anybody. Like
Yeah.
I got to get points now because I don't trust my defense to not let them drive down and score again. And then the other thing that Greg Olson said was he said that Chase Young was a premier defensive player in our
Yeah.
league.
Yeah.
Well, it's like they usually don't trade those guys for third round picks.
Yeah.
Like
Not a
just
chance.
I don't some of the commentating stuff. Give it to the Lions. Like I'm I feel bad for Lions fans. Like cuz this was if you had given the Lions two options like hey, you could go and get absolutely smacked or you could pull the Atlanta Falcons, they'd be like, "I'll take smack for 1,000, Alex." Like I'd rather not think that I'm about to go to my first ever Super Bowl and then slowly but surely see us blow it. Cuz they did. Like the fumble by Gibbs was huge. The drops were huge. Them I mean, even the drop interception. Like you sit back, because let's be honest, Purdy played terrible outside of his ability to do what Lamar Jackson couldn't do, which was
Yeah.
run.
Yeah. And it was
Like,
only a few times, but it was in crucial times. And
yeah,
that was, I mean, that was what it, like you said, like it, they, they didn't, part of why the momentum shifted so hard and why that Niners were able to come back. I think some of it was because they went for it on those fourth downs. Like if they would have just kicked points, like yes, it's like kind of a win for the Niners because they're like, yeah, we stopped them to a field goal. But like it's even a bigger win when it's like we stopped them altogether. Like
yeah,
they didn't get any points, right? And then again, like all it takes is that one turnover. I mean, you were like in the process of texting, like they're gonna mess around and lose this game, and then like the next play they fumbled, and you're like, oh my god, here it is. So again, I think again, I love Dan Campbell. If he doesn't win Coach of the Year, I mean, it's an absolute robbery because of what he's done with that program and all those guys. But there is a little bit of he's gonna have to just change his decision making just a little bit, because that kind of stuff is going to lose you games and not let you get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and then I will some of the stuff I found it very some of the things were humorous to me of how the NFL operates, and I think everyone can see it, but then they get sort of quiet and like no, especially the commentators that don't address it. I thought it was comical that on that near pick that Ayuk catches, there's a flag, and then they're like, "Yeah, there wasn't a flag," and you're like, "Well, what would have happened if it had been a pick?
Yeah.
Would it have not been a flag then? Like, what if it was dropped? Would it have not been a flag? Like, that's the type of stuff that I hate because I'm just like, dude, if it comes out of your pocket, then you're calling it. Like, I
Well,
hate the whole like the mystery behind it because it does. I'm not trying to say conspiracy theory, but it tends to give you some like, what are we doing here?
that's what I hate because sometimes like, and it's like I don't know if it's just because I'm watching on TV and there's like an explanation maybe in the stadium that they just don't cover on TV, but there's times where like you said, they'll just completely gloss over the fact. Like, and the commentators will pretend like it just never even happened. They're Sandra Bullock just walking around like, and you're like, wait a second, we're not going to talk about that. Like, what happened? I want to get some like context of why they picked that flag up. And I know one of the things they're doing, I don't know if it was this year or like the last couple years, they've been doing that like assisted review or whatever, where like New York calls in and is like, hey, y'all messed it up, or it was clear that he was out of bounds or whatever, and it's just like a quick review because they're trying to get the game moving, which I'm all on board for. But then there's times where, like, I mean, we've talked about it. There's like a blatant miss, blatant, and everybody's screaming in the stadium. Even the announcers and like Gene Sarator are just like, I don't know what they're seeing out there, Alex, because that was a bad call. Like, where's New York there? Like, how do you do it for some but not for others? Like, why are we not using the technology we have to just make one phone call and be like, you guys missed it, change it back?
100%. I mean, I said because the last time I didn't know this stat. The last time that Jared Goff was in an NFC championship or yeah, an NFC championship game was when the Rams played the Saints and Dan Campbell was on the Saints sideline as the tight ends coach when that pass interference
Oh,
that
where
never
he just
happened.
trucked the running back. Yeah.
Well, yeah, in like there was no flag and everyone's like standing there like, are we being serious right now? Like e- everyone in the stadium just saw this. Like and the NFL couldn't correct that. That's the type of stuff that I said, just like what you're saying is like there are times that something clear and obvious happens that then the NFL just turns a blind eye to. And it's like you can't have it both ways. Like,
One thing I will say they've gotten a little bit better at is like disagreeing with the call on the field. That used to be like an absolute, like, you're going to lose your job if you say that. Which, like, it's still pretty bad, but there's times where I hear like Blandino or Gene Steratore just be like, oh, I probably would have called that. I don't know what they're looking at. Like, they've done that a few times, but a few years back, that was just like unheard of. They would just be making up rules, just try to defend the refs. So like, oh, that wasn't a catch because blah blah blah. And you're like, wait a second, that's never been a rule. Like, they're just making stuff up, and it's gotten a little bit better, but it's still not great. And I still think we should fine the refs for some of these missed calls.
oh, 100%. Transitioning from that to back to the game, for me, I sent this text out and wanted to get more of your perspective on it. When the Lions were winning, and the 49ers looked terrible, I said that I think Golf's the only guy that can beat Kansas City. And I'm still going to stand by that just because I know that Purdy won and they got there. But when you watch, like, if it wasn't for those third down runs and if it's not for Christian McCaffrey, like, did he make some throws? Yes, it wasn't that he just played terrible, but he didn't play great. Like, at no point when I sit back and I watch the Kansas City game, which we'll get into a minute with Spagnolia just blitzing guys in your face, having to make like key reads, key throws every single time. Like, I sit back and the only thing that saved Purdy was the fact that Cam Sutton and CJ played terrible, you know?
So so I was surprised. If you would have asked me, like, am I surprised at what happened in that game? yes, from like the whole prospect of the game, but if you look at just like the box score and the final score, that's exactly how I expected it to go. Like that's what I picked. I thought the Niners would win, but the Lions would keep it close and give them everything they got. If you again, like if you'd have told me that they were going to get up by 17 early and then blow it, I would have said, you're crazy. But I we you've already talked about it. Purdy's runs were like literally the difference maker. And because of how the Niners played Green Bay, I thought that Detroit's pass rush was even better. Now I know Detroit's secondary is pretty bad, but I thought that their pass rush was going to be enough to keep Purdy frustrated enough where he wasn't going to be able to take advantage of Detroit's poor secondary, which I mean, in all honesty, he kind of wasn't. It was really, again, it was those runs, right? Because if those are sacks instead of 20-yard runs, it's a completely different ball game, right? And like they were getting there, it just like wasn't quite at those right moments. And that, it's the game of inches thing that happened that Purdy was able to overcome, because it's not like he really beat him with his arm. He did basically what Purdy does. It was really those runs that were the huge difference maker in my eyes.
Yeah, and that and in the second half, the Lions really struggled because in the first half, I think that they had 3 different players. They kept going back to that stat that had more rushing yards than McCaffrey,
Yeah.
and in the second half, McCaffrey took over, which, I mean, we'll go into the Chiefs game here in a minute. I thought it really sort of solidified who the MVP was this year because let's be honest, like, if McCaffrey doesn't play in that game, the Lions win.
Well,
Like,
I think McCaffrey is like ailing too. I think he's dealing with something. And I think that's why in the Green Bay game he looked kind of, not his stats weren't quite there. Like he's got like something going on where
I think he has a bunch going on. I think he's just beat up from the amount of
I
use that
I
he's.
bet. I mean, that's kind of been his MO his whole career, especially playing on Carolina. But like, I think he was able to just kind of power through it and really show, how good he was. But like you said, like if I think he's the clear, legitimate MVP as far as he shows up week in and week out and does what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean the good thing for on the opposite side for the Lions, I was very surprised. Campbell, I don't know whether he said it as motivation for his guys, but he told his guys, this is probably our last shot. And he even said, like, the way he talked in the post game conference, I was sort of surprised at. He was just, it was a player's perspective where he was just like, it's tough to get back here, like, really tough. And he's like, no one's going to be surprised at you next year. Like,
Yeah.
everyone knows who you are.
It's
And
it's it's the Matt Nagy effect. Yeah, like that one year at the Bears, him and Trubisky, everybody was like, "Whoa, where did this come from?" All it took is 1 year though, and they figured him out, and they were never the same.
yeah. And they're going to lose their offensive coordinator. He's been pretty much penciled in. It's just not beneficial that he's going to be the new head coach of the Commanders. I sit back and at least for the Lions perspective going forward in the draft, they can go get corners. Those are a dime a dozen on the market. You can even afford to go splurge and go get your guy. They're still young. Amon Ra is still super young. Gibbs is young. I know Montgomery. It's sort of crazy to think that of how good they ran the ball last year, they throw in Montgomery and looks even better. So I think it proved to the Lions like we've got the offensive line that anyone can run. We're just trying to find the right guy who does what we need. I'm still of a big fan of like just going and getting someone other than Reynolds. Not that Reynolds played bad, and I know it's one game. I just look at it from like the standpoint of you've got good free agents coming that it's like next year's even harder. The Packers are going to be better. The Bears are going to be better. The Vikings are going to be better. It's going to be tough to get out of the NFC still again. You have to continue to build a team. I think Detroit's excited, but I do believe Campbell's right that it will be a lot tougher for the Lions to go back next year than it will be, you know, as in this year. Not that it was easy, but it's difficult.
Oh
It
yeah.
it, it helped too that Kirk Cousins went down. You never really know how they didn't play Minnesota till the last 3 weeks of the season. It's like how would that have changed things? They were clear times with the Lions too. I know Pops was like, "Hey, I want you to bring that up." That they had some of these games late, especially like versus the Bears and other things. It was like they just were unable to finish games. It caught them at the absolute worst time in the world. But I also sit back and look at the Bucks game. Bucks had their opportunity too. Like they tried to give games away. They're late, and that's sort of the thing with the Lions. They gotta learn how to finish
Yeah.
next year.
And again, I think that comes down to Dan Campbell. Like a lot of it is the coaching in, he's not necessarily the one calling the plays, but like when it comes down to these situations and you're making a choice, eh, there's good choices and bad choices, and a lot of it is hindsight. But at the end of the day, I mean, sometimes just going with the numbers of like, dude, take the points and tie the game is what you need to do.
Yeah,
Whether or not it fits your MO, I'm sorry. Like, because you would much rather go down in history as that guy that like made some conservative calls but won a Super Bowl than like, man, that dude always gambled but like never won anything. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree. I agree. The I know Pops especially was texting a lot. Just the 6 point. Those 6 points really added up, and I agree. Like you sit back and you look at it from the standpoint of just the scoreboard, which is ultimately what decides the game. And the other thing is you know the ability to just like you said on that second going for it to just tie it up to say, hey, it's a tied ball game. Defense, go do your job.
yeah,
You know, Defense, it's still a one possession game. Bravo to the Lions. They drove right down, got themselves in scoring position, and were able to pull it within a 3 point game to try to get an onside. But at the same time, it was just like you could tell San Francisco was sort of like 10 point game, guys. Like this game's over.
yeah, because
Not that,
they felt it too. I mean, the momentum, like again, if you kick that extra point, or not the extra point, you kick that field goal and you tie it up, that puts some pressure on San Fran. You know what I mean? Like when they got that, turnover on downs, it boosted momentum, and they're kind of like, all right, now we got this, we're rolling. But if they are like in this position where it's like, oh my God, we got to score because we're tied. And if we give, like, that's when mistakes happen. You know what I mean? Like, it just changes the dynamic of, Purdy maybe tries to force something because he's like, I don't want to give him the ball back. Like that stuff happens. And if you don't think that plays a role, you're crazy. But like when all of a sudden you're kind of like free and loose because you're like, we got the lead. All we got to do is keep the ball. That's exactly what San Fran was doing. They loved that.
yeah, it switching a team that just for as bad as they played, they find a way to get the momentum and they just keep it there. They just are this team that I think everyone thinks is like, hey, they're going to win. You know, the second that things go right for them, they're just like, this team's winning the game. It's the Chiefs. Like they came out with a stat. I think it was their seventh straight game that they've started off their first possession with a score. And you're just like, for them to drive down and throw that touchdown pass to Kelsey, I think everyone in the building was just like,
God damn it.
"Dude, these dudes are gonna win. like, like, and now on the opposite side, like I sit back and I laughed so hard. I was telling Holly, I was like, "Why are you throwing it to Aguilar? You know, did we not learn anything from YouTube?" And Holly was like, "What's on YouTube?" And I was like, "Oh, there was this fire in Philly, and the Eagles had drafted Aguilar, and he was dropping all the catches. Well, this dude, they're throwing babies out this third story apartment, and he's catching them." And it's completely unrelated to the Eagles, but they're interviewing the dude. They're like, "What happened?" And he's like, "Well, they were throwing the babies out, and we were catching them." Unlike Aguilar, in that, like, I got laughing so hard because I think that even Eagles fans were like, "This is the exact dude that we had
Yeah.
here," you know. And the bigger play was just I looked up the stats for today's. I did a bad news Monday with Lamar, 2-4 in the playoffs, and it's 4 losses. He's thrown 4 touchdown passes, 5 picks, but I think the bigger stat is in all 4 of those losses, 0 rushing touchdowns. And there was just times in that game that I was like, "Here it is. Like,
Yeah.
here's the run.
Just
Go,
run.
dude."
It's given me like almost Justin Field vibes where like I feel like he's been told like he needs to be a pocket passer so much. And like, don't get me wrong, they built the offense around Lamar being able to run the ball. But it's just one of those things where like he is purposefully looking to stay in the pocket, which, I get it, health reasons, all that kind of stuff. But like it feels like he's thinking about that fact while the game is happening, when in reality, if he just played, there were so many times where it was just like, and he's fast, like, I mean, he's so elusive and so quick, all it took is one step and he's gone, or he's got at least a first down or something. But even on the few times that he did run, and I sent this in it looked like he was just looking for the next opportunity to get down, which again, I get it. You don't want your quarterback out there just like taking hits and doing dives and all that stuff. But like at the same time, like when Lamar is running, you want him to be running, right? Because all it takes is, one step and he can be, 40 yards down the field in no time. And he would get through that first line and then just kind of like look around and like, where can I slide?
Yeah,
And that, I think, was the big difference maker of like, they still had a shot at that game all the way to the end, but he just, the rush was getting there. They were bringing the house. And the only way that I could say that either Lamar just wasn't seeing open dudes or his guys were getting locked up, which is probably the more likely scenario. And if that's the case, then he had 50 yards in front of him with nobody there.
yeah. I mean, the other stat from running that I saw this morning, the Ravens just running backs on the roster had 6 carries for the game. Against the team that allowed 182 rushing yards the week prior, and I looked it up. Edwards and Hill had 3 carries each. Zay Flowers had 2, Lamar had 8, but those 8 weren't all designed runs. A lot of it is on the scrambles, but I mean, I sit back and look at that game and there you talk about the momentum. There were just times that you just like, here's a chance for the Ravens. The Ravens can make this game, get back into it. And it was like every single opportunity. And then what was surprising to me is on the opposite side of the ball, man, like for as much as the Chiefs got home on Lamar, they could not get to Mahomes.
Yeah.
Like it was, you could sense the frustration, which some of I will say, going back to the refs, like I, I wanted to bring this up because there was just like some calls in that game that I was just like, "Hmm." Like I get that Roquan blew that dude up on the line.
The guard. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've seen that happen like 15 times this
Never,
season.
never have
Never,
I ever seen them call that unnecessary roughness
yeah,
ever.
ever. It was all that to me was just sort of like that was weird. There was definitely, some missed pass interference like that, you know, likely the tight end, he does a little, 15-yard curl on the inside. As Lamar's getting ready, he starts to turn, and when he turns, that Chiefs guy grabs him, pulls him all the way to the ground, but there's no flag. And then there's just other little things in the game that you just sort of set back and you were just like, eh, you know, it,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the unnecessary roughness on Roquan's, which I thought was actually a smart play. If they intentionally jumped off sides to reset it to 1st and 10 as opposed to 1st and 5, I thought that was brilliant, honestly. Um, I don't think the 15 yards really affected the game too much, but I get what
no.
you're getting at. Like there was just a few that were kind of like this. Just it never seems even. Like that, regardless of which game you watch, it always seems like there's a one-sided pool to what the refs are looking at.
Yeah, I mean, they had the taunting on Zay Flowers, which I get. He spun the ball on the dude, but like I saw multiple times where Kelsey like was away from the play, would get up in some other Ravens dude's face, and they like threw the flag on the Ravens guy, which I was like, it's the NFL has said that it's supposed to be on the dude that initiated that like was
Yeah,
he wasn't the
and,
second guy to react. He
and
was the initial dude.
Kelsey's known for that. Like he loves to play that role and get under people's skin and all that stuff. But it works.
Oh, he does a Hall of Fame job at it.
Oh
Like
yeah, he's great at it.
you could tell, which I think is what led to Roquan blowing that dude up. Like Roquan was just mad. Like you
Yeah.
could tell the whole Ravens defense was just like, I've had enough of this, and we're not winning, and you're frustrated. But you gotta. I just sit back with. I don't know why. It's sad to say. I feel like an idiot. Like hindsight. I was like, why did I even doubt that the Chiefs were going to do this?
Yeah.
Like, I knew I had a feeling that they'd beat the Dolphins, but then I really thought like this is the Bills' year, and it was like, nope. And then you're like, no, this is the time for Lamar to finally prove that he's capable. Nope. And I know we're gonna do a Super Bowl preview next week. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, I'm picking the Chiefs. Like,
I'm picking Mahomes.
yeah, like I don't. I look at how, especially just for how bad they played during the regular season. But the other side of that is I'm more surprised about how the Dolphins, the Bills, and now the Ravens, they got the same look every single week. We are going to go all out blitz. We're going to go man on the outside, and you're not going to beat us. And they've done it 3 straight weeks, and no one's been able to figure it out. And that blows my mind.
Yeah, when they played the Dolphins and Tua was just, I mean, they threw the ball those little screens like 65% of the time. And you're kind of like, well, it was cold. Tua doesn't have like the strongest arm, maybe. Like, I don't know. You're trying to like kind of make excuses. And then the Bills come out and try to do the exact same thing. And you're like, didn't didn't you watch last week's game? Didn't you see that didn't work? Like they can make open field tackles and like that's not going to work. And I didn't see the Ravens do it too much. I mean, they did on one, and Zay Flowers actually took it to the house, but I think there was a penalty. Um, but yeah, like you said, like they haven't like mixed it up a bunch. Like, and I personally didn't think that the Chiefs defense was really that good, but there's something I'm missing because to shut down the Dolphins offense, which was amazing, Josh Allen and the Bills, and then Lamar, I mean, like they've got something going on there that's really stumping these offenses.
The thing that I am seeing from the Chiefs defense that is different from the defenses that play the Chiefs is that the Chiefs are really good man on man. Like L'Jarius Sneed, they are able to just eight ball the outside guys, and they could maybe play a little soft zone in the middle of the linebackers. But it's like, yo, from a man on man perspective, we're gonna do this, and we just don't think your guys are quick enough or good enough, or really the offensive play calling to be good enough to really set yourself up to get the ball out of this dude's hands. And that's the thing that I like look forward to in the Super Bowl preview. Like, if I am the Chiefs, I'm salivating. Like Purdy has shown that under duress
Yeah.
makes some bad
Yep.
decisions. Now, Kyle Shanahan's supposed to be this offensive genius. We'll see how that shakes out. But I also sit back and look at the Ravens, and I was just like, for a team that has speed. Now, the other thing about the Ravens, I think it finally caught up to them. Zay Flowers, great. Like, and don't get me wrong, shouldn't have spun the ball in the dude's hand. If he had just tucked it, he was in the end zone. He was going to score that play. Odell and Aguilar are nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
Like,
The Ravens missed Keaton Mitchell bad because that dude's electric. And I think that's one thing that the Niners will have on the Ravens and everybody else that they've played. They get CMC coming out of the backfield. And you can bring the house if you want. But what happens when you bring the house? What's the quarterback looking for?
his check down.
A quick, hot check down. And if that's CMC coming out of the backfield and you got everybody else on the outside locked up, I mean,
You
good
better hope you tackle him.
good luck, right? Because so I'll say that's if I'm the Niners, that's my game plan going in is like spread everybody out, let them bring I hope they bring everybody because it's going to be swing pass, screen pass, angle routes to McCaffrey all day long. He's going to have 500 receiving yards. Like, do it because now I don't even have to put Purdy at risk of making a play down the field because his first look is going to be did that linebacker go with McCaffrey or does CMC got a step? Because if he does, he ain't catching him.
And this is, let's be honest, the first touchdown to Zay was very fortunate.
Oh yeah,
Lamar is going down, spins out of it, and throws a bomb to Zay. The second, you know, and that was it. Like they had one touchdown for the whole game. I sit back and look at this Kansas City defense. I'm pulling up, you know, just the last 3 games. They did give up 24 to Buffalo, but 26 to 7 against the Dolphins, 24 points to Buffalo, and 10 points to the Ravens. Dude, they're playing great,
Yeah,
great.
that's what I'm
Like,
saying. Like I would have never guessed that.
yeah, for as bad as they looked during the regular season at points, and even the offense, like, you just sort of sit back and you're like, where I really do. Pop said it, and I'm a big believer on it now. I think Matt Nagy called the regular season, and they were like, it's playoff time. It's Andy Reid's time.
Yeah,
Like, and he calls it, and dude, Andy has them dialed. Like, they just don't miss with some of the play calls. Now, I get that Mahomes, that's the other big thing. Like, there were a couple, the difference in the game to me, and it's been the difference for a lot. Now, the only game that was different was Buffalo. Like, Allen dropped a dime to Stephon Diggs 80 yards down the
dropped it.
field, dropped it. Lamar had two guys streaking, Odell and I think it was Aguilar streaking down the sideline, and just it wasn't even catchable for him. And then at the and I thought that was like it summed it up for me. At the very end of the game, game's on the line, Mahomes off his back throws like a 50-yard bomb to MVS to walk it off.
Of
And
all
you're just
people,
like, of all people, yeah, of all people to figure out how to catch a football. Uh, the biggest threat to the Chiefs, the only threat the Chiefs had that whole game, which they neutralized before the game even happened, is they said, Tony, you're inactive.
yeah, you got personal reasons, and that reason is you can't catch.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Ravens to me seem like they didn't adapt at all. Like they kind of just kept running the same playbook, and it was like Lamar backs up, Lamar gets sacked. Lamar backs up, gets a hand put up and gets the ball batted down. Like they didn't try to mix it up or do anything to like really take advantage of the fact that the Chiefs were playing so aggressive on defense. And even if it was just run with Lamar, like do something different because they just kept and now, I'll say that they were still in the game, like they still had a shot, but like it felt like the whole game they were just playing from behind and
Yeah.
trying to keep up, and they didn't do anything different at any point in the game, it seemed like, on offense.
And for me, it's not me saying LeVar can't play quarterback in this league. It's not me saying that at all. It's more about when you have a quarterback that throws like Mahomes, which is only, I'd say, less than five guys. You got him, you got Burrow, Herbert, Josh Allen, sometimes Tua, maybe, like sometimes. That when they are in the pocket, the second some dude comes open, it's gone and
Yeah.
it's there. Like, it, Mahomes is what makes the difference. Like, you could literally switch quarterbacks, and I really do believe this. If you switch the quarterbacks on the teams, Mahomes still winning the game.
I agree. That's
Like,
why that's why when you said you pick the Chiefs, I said I'll pick Mahomes
yeah,
because
like,
he is the difference.
yes. Which I'll bring it up just because we'll talk more about the Super Bowl preview the next episode. So I guess we can get into this now of more just say I'm not calling him the greatest ever. Not doing that. It's more of what would he have to do because he's if they win this game, it's three Super Bowls. He's only lost one, which I thought was ironic, was to
To
Brady.
Brady, yeah.
What does he have to do, and what's the Chiefs' outlook? Because I think the thing I brought up to you in text, this is not official. It's more just conjecture. I for sure think Kelsey retires if they win.
Hmm.
Just there's past interviews where he's like, I think I can play for about another 3 years. I'd like to win two more. Like after they had won the first. That and I mean, let's be honest. Like you got a sugar mama for life who makes way more than you do.
Yes.
He doesn't need the money. I could see him coming back if also Andy Reid comes back. But if Andy hangs it up, I think there will be a lot more moving pieces to that team that they're just like, man, the boys are not together anymore. And when that happens, I think guys are more willing to go out on top. It's easy to come back when you have Mahomes. What does Mahomes have to do to sort of keep this going and for you to say, "Yeah, that's probably the greatest dude we've ever seen play."
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's just gonna be time, right? Like, they're doing a lot of comparisons of, like, Brady's first 6 seasons or whatever it is versus Mahomes' 6 seasons, and, like, they're very comparable. Now, I think you could make an argument that, like, outside of just pure Super Bowl rings, like, Brady's never been, like, a monster stat guy. Like, he's never even really been, like, a monster, like, playmaking, athletic dude either, right? Like name one time where you saw Tom Brady and you were like, "Damn, that was an athletic play," or like, "Man, that was amazing. I've never seen anybody do that." Right? Like it wasn't it didn't exist. Like, but part of the reason why he is the GOAT is because he played for so long and just won so much and got all those Super Bowls, right? Like, because that's what the end goal is. So I think a lot of it for Mahomes is just going to be time. And if he can continue to play at this level for the same amount of time that Brady did, I, I don't want to say that it's guaranteed, but like uh, and I said it in the text, like up until this point, Mahomes already has a handful, and like I'm talking like hand over fist plays and like times where you were just like, dude, that was amazing. Like I've never seen anybody do that, and Brady didn't have any of those like his entire career. So like if Mahomes can keep playing at this level, which is going to be hard to do, and this is really what the answer is that you kind of foreshadowed to is if he can have Andy Reid leave, if he can have Travis Kelsey leave and still continue to produce, that's what he'll need to do. And again, it's going to be an overtime thing, right? Because just Tyreek Hill leaving what 2 seasons ago, I mean that was like a huge drop off. Right now he's adapted and he's played still amazingly, but like you see that like it's a when you lose a player like that, or if you lose the caliber of a coach like Andy Reid, I mean, there's going to be not necessarily a fall off in production, but like there's going to be a change in how you play. And that was why I think Tom Brady, and like you talked about, one of the biggest reasons why Brady, like what really solidified his GOAT status was when he left and then won a Super Bowl with the Bucks, right? Like even people who don't like Tom Brady, when he did that, they were just like, dang, respect, right? Like because there's nothing else you can say to that. Like nothing. Doesn't matter. Like it's that, right?
For sure. It's funny that the way you talk about Brady reminds me honestly of like Purdy. Like, because let's be honest, like Brady didn't have a cannon. He just Brady was super. He was the ultimate game manager in terms of Brady just rarely made a mistake.
Oh, he was surgical. I mean,
Yes,
surgical.
and it was rare to really, and I think that's where guys, will criticize Purdy pretty quick. Did Brady make bad throws? Yeah, but most of the time, Brady put it right on a dude. Like it was clear that Brady had the arm talent underneath. He may not had, I've never seen the most incredible throw that Mahomes ever made was an incompletion, which was in that Super Bowl against the Bucks, where he's like parallel to the ground
It's like
and
diving
like
out of
throws it
bounds. Yeah.
and hit him. Like it should have been a touchdown. Like it was there. Like some of the throws that Mahomes makes, you're just like, I don't you that's not coachable.
Yeah. I would have
Like,
never thought of that.
yeah. It's like yeah, when you watch a slam dunk contest and some dude jumps over a whole entire car and does a 360 and slams it, at no point I was like, I wonder why those other guys didn't think of that. Like
Yeah.
it, the I sit back and when you talk about coaching and stuff, like I sit back and I look at Rodgers. Like, here's a guy up in Green Bay. They refuse to get him help, you know, and it showed like, was he still a great quarterback? 100%. Like, got him into the playoffs, took him deep. I get that they couldn't get past San Francisco a bunch, but like, you sit back and you're like, well, he also didn't have what many consider to be the greatest tight end of all time, and also Tyreek Hill and other things. And that to me is like Andy Reid. You can't argue with the fact that how I'd say that the only coach that sort of rivals him is Belichick,
Oh yeah.
and it's because of the 6 rings. But like when you look at Andy Reid's resume, I get that they only went to one, but still 4 straight NFC titles with the Eagles, and now you look at the Chiefs and Mahomes, what is this, 6 straight AFC title games? Like,
Yeah, that he's been to? Yeah, I
yeah,
think so.
6 straight. Like, and if they go to now that they're in the Super Bowl, it's 4 out of 5 years in the Super Bowl. They win 3 Super Bowls in what, 4 years? They only missed that one, or no, 3 out of 5. They won 1, then they lost to Brady, and then
One
the
last year.
Rams, yeah, Stafford. I just sort of sit back and I go, time will tell, because it's difficult. You look at all the rosters in the NFL, you think about how many teams strike out and miss on different talent. I think that Mahomes will always elevate the guys around him. It's why, who would have thought that MVS, Rasheed Rice, and these bunch of no names would be going to a Super Bowl? Well, it's because you got Mahomes. He elevates the play of everyone. And when you put someone amazing with him, it gets even sort of like when Brady had Randy that year and they go undefeated during the regular season. It's like, if you'll put some talent around him,
Yeah.
watch out.
It's gonna be fun to watch, yeah.
Yeah. And then just health. Like I said, probably the only stat that rivals Brady's 7 Super Bowl rings is the fact that he played till he's 45.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even 35 yet. And I wake up some days and I'm just like, dude, my body hurts.
Yeah,
Can't imagine
yeah,
getting blown up.
you can have Roquan Smith tackling you the day before
Ugh.
either.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to see. I think the game for me, it means it if the Chiefs could have picked who they wanted to play, it'd been the Lions. I do think that
Yeah.
the the 49ers have enough guys on this team that lost last time that revenge will be a factor. Like,
Well, I mean, especially for the Lions with that same notion in mind, like week 1, the
yeah,
Lions went into Arrowhead and beat KC. So KC I mean, they wanted to play the Lions because they wanted that revenge game and it was going to make it that much sweeter. Plus, I think everybody, as good as the Lions played, I think everybody just thinks that the Niners are a better team. So, naturally you'd rather play the team that you think you have an advantage on.
yeah. It will be an interesting game. I think that they're right now the line opened up -2.5 for the Niners. It went down to -1.5 now, and I would not be surprised if it stays a Niners advantage, because I think money's going to fly in on the Chiefs. Like, I already saw Dave Portnoy was like, I think I'm going to risk $1 million on the Chiefs since they're an underdog in this, and I'm like, I probably would too. Like, if I just had 400 million, I could afford to throw $1 million on what I think is probably going to happen. Yeah, I'd probably do that too. Um, but it'll be interesting. It should be a good Super Bowl,
Oh, yeah.
depending on how the Niners. For me, it all comes down to the Niners offense. Mahomes is going to get his.
Yeah.
Like,
Whether they start slow or, kind of come out clicking like that we've seen them do. Like if they play like they did in the second half all game against the Chiefs, it's going to be an amazing game.
yes, but if Mahomes and them gets up 31 points or something, or 17 points in the first half,
Yeah, they're
I'm
probably
I don't see Mahomes losing a 17-point lead.
no.
Like, they just he'll yeah. But I really think, based upon how well the Lions ran, I would not be shocked if you told me that Isaiah Pacheco was going to be the MVP of the Super Bowl. Like,
Interesting.
I can see that. Does that happen? No, because quarterbacks win MVPs. They win. You know, it's the same with the argument with Christian McCaffrey of why is he not getting the
Yeah,
notoriety.
dude, if I have to read another article right now that says, "Oh, the supposed MVP," when they're talking about Lamar Jackson, like it's basically already decided, like it drives me nuts. Especially when you see games like yesterday, like even the week before. I know everybody's talking about how well he did. And yeah, he had 100 rush yards, but we all know that 100 rush yards from a quarterback is different than 100 rush yards from a running back when they're expecting, when you get the ball, it's a run kind of thing. Like his stat lines have not been impressive. Like his defense has kept him in games, and has won him games. And like I'm not saying he's not absolutely amazing and fun to watch because he is, but like when you're talking about MVP, like Christian McCaffrey is clearly that guy, like clearly the huge difference maker for his team as far as offensive production and how they can win and or lose games. Like cuz Lamar Jackson just when he doesn't get it done, it's just not there. Like and it's just like, man, that was a bad game. And like he won last week against the Texans, but I mean, again, go back and look at his stat line. It's like 150 pass yards and like 100 rush yards. Now, again, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, which is huge, and I'm not discrediting that. But like, if you're going to talk about like, oh, his stats are amazing, all this sort of stuff, it's just not. They're not there. His stat line was probably better this game than it was in the previous game, but his defense played a lot better in the last game, so they won. Like it's easy to say a guy looks amazing when they're winning, but I like to look at it as like when they lose, like how did that guy play? Like, and to me, like Lamar is just he did great. Again, I'm not saying that he's bad. Like I'm not putting him in any bad category. He did fantastic for the Ravens. But like when you're talking about the MVP as far as like the most important person to that team's success, it's Christian McCaffrey hands down.
Yeah. I think the thing I keep going thinking about our text messages and to just even more emphasize McCaffrey's case. One of the things that's driven me nuts this whole season, and it's not me hoping for anyone to get hurt. It's not that. It's more just like the way Mahomes will run, and there's been twice now in big games that one in particular was against the Jets that a dude has a kill shot on Mahomes and just runs right past him. And
Because they know.
yes, and they're like, "Well, I don't want to." Like the NFL has done exactly what it hoped for, which is we want to keep our star players healthy. We're going to condition you to not hit them. But now it's sort of, in my opinion, it's leading to some unintended consequences, which is now quarterbacks have no fear and they just run down the field and they're like, "You're not going to hit me." Eh, But on the other side, it's like McCaffrey. Dude, watch him getting tackled yesterday. You're like, dude, sometimes I was like, yeah, I understand. Like, if you wanted to lay there for a few minutes, I'd be okay with that. Like,
Yeah, when he gets up and he's like, "Coach, I need one," and you're like, "Yeah, I bet you do.
I
I,
bet you do.
I'm gonna need a year to recover from that."
Yeah, I
That's
watched three defensive linemen try to just put your head in through the turf there at, the field. But meanwhile, like, Mahomes will get shoved out of bounds. And they're, now I get that he had one, that hand to the face was pretty obvious by the defensive tackle that was, roughing the passer. I get that. That was a shot to the head.
yeah, when Clowney dipped his head on him.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the one where he was like running forward and that defensive tackle, like,
Oh,
just,
oh.
yeah, smacked him right in the face. That the Clowney one, like, I just sit back and I'm sure that Brady and Favre and Elway and Montana and all these guys are like, where was that when I played?
Yeah.
Because not only did I get hit, but then this dude would take his full body weight, which makes like what Favre did even more. The fact that that dude played for that long, broken thumbs. You just sort of think about these dudes prior. It's like if they don't win a case against the NFL for like abuse at the position, like y'all didn't care about our health at all. In
That
fact, you would like rep it that did you see Favre? He was missing three toes, bones stick out, still threw three touchdowns. Like I just the guys today, I get the NFL's making them healthier, but it's also made it so defenses don't know how to tackle.
well, I mean, that almost brings a case of like why I don't think Lamar should win the MVP. Like we talked about it. In the playoffs, man, like you're expecting Elway level runs where like
Yeah,
dude's putting his body on the line, doing everything he possibly can. Like I'm not so concerned with him not winning the game. Like that's beside the point because you played Mahomes. But like when it came down to it, I'm like, dude, where was Lamar? Like, how
I
does
saw Purdy lower his shoulder.
that's what I'm saying. Like Lamar just didn't do anything, and you can't say it was just like because the defense was just that good. Because BS, dude, like BS. He did not show up, and he shouldn't get the MVP. And it's not because of one game. I'm telling you, that's the way Lamar plays now. And I'm sorry, like that's not MVP level play.
Yeah, especially when I get first game of the season. Hey, what's funny is Josh Allen runs all the time, like you were hoping Lamar would run yesterday. For those of you who don't know about the Elway helicopter against Green Bay in the Super Bowl, but yeah, there were so many times in that game that you just sort of sit back and you're like, dude, like get it, like get the first down,
Do
like
something.
it, there's no question in my mind. Like somehow Josh Allen, they don't see the line on the field beyond everyone else's, inconceived logic, but Allen sees the line because that dude is like, I know exactly where the first down is, and I'm getting it. Like,
It also helps that Josh Allen's like 270 pounds, whatever it is, but still,
oh, I get that.
I get what you're getting at.
Yeah, it just there were just time, and then that pick. What's nuts is that 2021 game against the Chiefs. He threw the exact same pick. Exact. They were going to the opposite end zone in triple coverage and just threw it up. And
Yeah,
like, I, you just sort of sit back, and my dad has said it, and it's true. The playoffs is just not the time for turnovers. And the Ravens coughed it up. They had Lamar fumble, the interception, and then Zay Flowers. Like, you just sit back and it's like the Chiefs are the defending Super Bowl champions and they know how to win. You can't turn the ball over 3 times and just give them the game. And that's
yep,
what they did.
yep.
So, ugh, I'm mad again. I was mad last night. I wanted to see the Lions go to the Super Bowl. The fact that, bravo to Lions fans. They filled the whole stadium up last night. And then I just sat back and I was like, every Lions fan drove home going, this is the exact Lions that we've seen for the last 50 years.
Yeah, that was a tough way to go.
But outside of that, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
That's it.
Cool beans. Well, we'll bring you another episode next week. We'll give a preview. I know we sort of previewed it a little bit, but we'll get more into it and just sort of what both teams need to do to win, how they can lose, sort of our predictions, and then we'll end up giving a prediction before the episode ends. But follow us on TikTok, Instagram, go to our social medias for our podcasts on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Website footballtalksquadron.com. Until then, time to pull chalks. We'll see you next week.